All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the Village Council special meeting, Village of Oxford, at 6:02 p.m. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Sure. Lori Bourgeau.
Present.
Kelsey Cook.
Here.
Maureen Hall. Absent Allison Kemp. Absent Ashley Ross.
Here. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
No changes. I will make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Okay, motion made by Bourgeau, seconded by Ross. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nay? Motion carries. Okay, item 5 on our agenda is call to the public. So this is time for our council to hear from anyone who'd like to speak. You may voluntarily state your name and address, but you don't have to. I will do a 3-minute timer just for efficiency in tonight's meeting. If you'd like to speak, please step up to the podium at your leisure, and we'll kind of make sure everybody gets their chance. So does anyone like to speak under public comment?
Question,
Sure.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Is this going to be regarding 6A, or do we wait until public comment in number 7?
Yeah, so there are two opportunities for public comment tonight. If you want council to hear anything that you'd like to say before we consider the agenda items under 6, then I would speak now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me first say I'm Ron Petrovsky. I live in the Village of Oxford, and I've been a resident here for about just under 8 years. And I thank you for this opportunity to offer an opinion on the subject of the request by March for Our Lives and We March Again, two groups that have asked to take Centennial Park for a purpose of their own choosing. And in case I am opposed to this completely, We March Again is a political organization that supports March for Our Lives, who is nothing really more than a gun control activist group. We need to know who they really are. So I did a little research, and in addition to being anti-Second Amendment, this rally group touts globalist sounding, even communist type action against things like state-sanctioned violence by police, quotations. This is coming right from their website. They are pro-racial justice, economic justice, immigrant rights, rights of our LGBTQIA+ comrades. These are all comrades. So where do we hear terms like that? They want collective awareness. They want to call for a world reimagined, a world where oppressive power structures are abandoned and community is embraced. Does this really sound like the kind of words that should be used by an organization our community wants to embrace and welcome? I think not. So we don't have a gun problem, in my opinion, humble opinion. What we do have is a serious people problem. If we really want to address the horror of the mass shootings that take place, as we had in our own community here recently, what we need to fix are the things that have changed for the worse in the last 50 years, things like family values, removing prayer from schools, defunding law enforcement who actually protect us from that kind of violence, redefining what is acceptable socially, not prosecuting crimes and the criminals who commit them, not enforcing existing laws that are on the books, indoctrinating our children with woke racial and gender ideology. I think it's terrible. What we should be focusing on is not gun violence, because they don't create violence. It's the people who use them. What we have, no doubt, is a very serious social and mental health crisis in this country. Many are sick. Too few people are able to even recognize their own illness, and even less reach out for any help. Sad reality is there are too few resources for those who need it. In the last 60 years, in my lifetime plus, number of beds available in psychiatric hospitals in America has dropped by 96%. In 1955, there were 340 beds per 100,000 people. Today, if you can believe it, there's 11.7 beds per 100,000 people. That's 328 beds fewer. Instead of acting on functional measures with real solutions, that will reduce crime and help those with dangerous behavioral health issues, what we do is to infringe instead on the rights of those law-abiding people who never and will never commit a crime. This isn't a real solution. What we need here is to exercise fact-based common sense and not fall victim to politically motivated, agenda-driven activists. And I would hope that you consider my statements. I've lived a long time, and I don't like what I see happening in our country, and we need to work at the local level to prevent it from growing further like a cancer.
Thank you for your comments. I just want to point out that council is here to listen. We're not going to respond to comments. I know you haven't asked us to respond, but I just want to let everybody know that we're here listening to everything everybody has to say. So, would anyone else like to speak under public comment? Yep, go ahead. You can step up to the podium and share your name and address if you'd like.
My name is Dylan Morris, a rising senior and an organizer of the march taking place in downtown Oxford on Saturday. My mother cannot be here. It's my brother's honors night at the middle school. I would like to read my mother's remarks this evening. My name is Jenny Morris. My son is Dylan Morris, a rising senior and executive director of No Future Without Today. I've been primarily in contact with Joe Medor several times in regards to the march at Centennial Park on June 11, 2022. Dylan, along with a group of classmates from Oxford High School, had decided to collaborate with March for Our Lives with the additional launch of our nonprofit, No Future Without Today. There have been many roadblocks and setbacks in our way to hosting a march for the students who are grieving, traumatized, and starving for change. I know that Joe Medor has mentioned that we will need liability insurance for this location, but this has become a challenge as many firms do not offer this type of coverage for demonstrations. Additionally, our kids cannot afford this insurance. After speaking with other event organizers, i.e. Black Lives Matter March, who have had events at Centennial Park, it has come to my attention that they did not provide insurance to the village. My son also spoke at the village at Centennial Park on Friday, and there was no application, no payment, and no insurance submitted. Considering these details, I'm curious how one event can be required to have liability insurance and the other does not. March for Our Lives does not provide insurance. They show up, they demonstrate, and leave. The village cannot selectively enforce the rules because our event may be too political or controversial, as this may potentially violate the First Amendment. Although Mr. Medor has been very pleasant and is a nice man, I believe he has made this much more difficult than it needs to be on an Oxford High School mom dealing with enough. This evening, I hope the village council members will be able to come together and push this through for our kids. I have full faith in my son, his classmates, and this village council. I appreciate your time, and I hope we can all be Oxford strong instead of merely saying we are. End quote. I would additionally like to add a couple of points. I have spoken to the deputy legal director of the ACLU. They told me that a grassroots organization without significant financial resources should not be prevented from engaging in a march simply because it cannot afford the charges the city would like to impose. Additionally, I would like to express that if another event like this were to happen in the future in the village, financial requirements, including liability insurance, should include a waiver for groups that cannot afford the charge, so that even grassroots organizations can exercise their free speech rights. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to speak under public comment?
Sure.
Yes.
My name's Sheila Frost. I've been living here for
ever.
But anyway, sometimes I don't think the kids actually know what they're getting themselves into with certain little, how can you say it? Well, you could say a gang, but then you could call it another name. But I think is the kids should really pay attention to what is actually happening. Okay? Now, questions for you guys. Okay, why is this March for Lives again is already on your calendar without anybody's approval or without anybody else's knowledge of it? Anybody has an answer?
We can't answer your questions during public comment, but we'll take notes, and when we have our discussion on the agenda item, council can choose to discuss it at that point.
But I would like the kids to actually think about what they're doing. Now, you want to march? Fine. You got a congressman.
Ma'am, you have to address council for your comments. You can't address the audience as well.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So I can't do it. All right. Another time.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak under public comment?
Yes.
Yep, in the back. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Westmoreland, and I'm just sharing a little snippet from PolitiFact.com. This is the snippet I have. In the midst of gun control debate, a data-laden graphic shared on Facebook posted this. Rifles are nothing compared to human brawn. More people die from hands, feet, fists than rifles. The quote continues to say, I guess we should ban guns now. This was posted on May 25th under a graphic title. This was the quote on the title. Number of victims in the United States in 2020 by weapons used shows rifle deaths by 455 and deaths from personal weapons, hands, fists, feet, etc. was 662. On behalf of my family, I would ask that you do not consider permission for this group to rally on May 11th. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. May I also like to speak under public comment? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Andrea Jones. I have a junior at Oxford High School as well as a middle schooler. And I want to say that these kids absolutely know what they're about to do. They've been living with Alice drills and training since they were in grade school. They know better than any adult in this room what we're dealing with. They were there when it happened. It was their friends. They're still dealing with the trauma. They understand it better than anybody else in this room. They have every right, with their First Amendment right, to march and have their voice heard. You know, everybody in this room is older, and we've all had life experience that maybe they don't have. But when did we sell out? In the 90s, we marched. In the 60s, we marched. In the 70s, we marched. Who are we to take that away from them? It's just as important to them. They're the ones living their lives. They're the ones that have to live with us. Let's not forget what we did when we were their age. Don't forget what it's like to be them. Don't take their voice away. They are the ones who are going to vote. And they're the ones that are going to be running this country. And we should take pride in the fact that our kids are out here willing to come here and take a stand. And they took all the proper steps to fill out paperwork and organize and notify everybody and do everything right. Who are we to hold them back? There's something wrong here. These kids have yet to have their voice since this happened. Since it happened. And it happens every day in this country. I mean, give the kids their voice. Let them have what they want to say. They're the ones whose lives are on the line. And their siblings. They're doing it for their siblings because their siblings are going to be in this scenario too. And then their children. There's a mom in Oxford who lived through Columbine. And now her kids are now living through Oxford. Nothing has changed in 20 years. These kids are trying to do something different because what we're doing has not worked. Give them the opportunity. What we're doing isn't working.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone like us in the back? Next.
Excuse me for 1 second. You sat there and allowed her to speak that entire time to the audience, and yet you chastised another person for speaking to the audience.
Sir, she was speaking directly.
Just calling it out, make sure it's on the record. That's obviously what I saw happen.
That's not true, but, sir, go ahead.
My name is George Stockton. I have an 11th grader and a 9th grader at high school. I don't have any planned remarks. I decided to come here at the last minute when I saw what was on the agenda. I'd like to speak in support of what Dylan so eloquently said and what he read from his mom's letter. I think that this is a free speech issue. There are legal issues involved, and that's for all of you to discuss. But it's not a good look when you deny a young group of people or anybody who wants to come to what is our town square and say what they have to say and do what they have to do. This is called a protest. It is a march with an event at Centennial Park, just like many events that we've had in the past. There's nothing more democratic than people coming into the town square, our town square, to talk, to speak, to debate, and to have events. This is something that is supported by a lot of the businesses in the community, the churches, many volunteers who are coming forward to support this. This is not a good look. The optics are not good when we had a school shooting and these kids need to express themselves and have this outlet when they haven't had this, to have a voice, to be heard, so that they can hear us in Lansing, they can hear us in Washington. This has to happen, it has to be heard. It's more than about the legalities of this. I think that you need to let this happen and make it work. And if there's any place where there should be a march for our lives and have this very democratic expression, the most idealistic expression of democratic values, it is in Oxford. If we can't do this, where can this happen? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. And while you're approaching the podium, Ms. Frost, if you'd like to step back up to the podium after and finish your comments, I'd be welcome to have your comments. I thought you were asking questions of the students, and I just want to make sure any comments are directed at council.
That's all right. I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Westmoreland, and I'm very nervous, I'm sorry. I had no plan to talk today. I've been a resident here in Oxford since 1997. My children all went through Oxford schools, so I live here. It's my home, and I feel what everyone has felt. I think the issue here today is that it's not that that we don't want to hear the students. We want to hear the students. We love them. They are our children. The issue is that this organization that is being called upon to organize this and to publicize it across the world is not an organization that represents what I feel that we have in Oxford. I feel that people that we all know in Oxford are patriotic people who love their children, who love their community. And from what I've seen of the organization, they're trying to undermine that, and they're trying to bring in gun control in ways that isn't healthy for our nation or our Constitution. Of course we want to hear from the kids. Of course we support the kids. Of course we love them. And what happened in our community is something we never imagined would ever happen here. We need to be careful that we're watching how we're being portrayed across the nation. We do. And this organization, March for Our Lives, is one that I don't think really represents who we are here. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Dan Bowe. I live in Oakland Township. Just like this young lady, this is not my wheelhouse to be up here speaking to this really good group of people. But at 19, I went to Vietnam. At about just a little older than these young guys here that just spoke, the young man just spoke. And I appreciate both sides of this. I really do. Having lived through some of the things I've lived through. I was in law enforcement for many years, retired. So we've all seen a little bit of real life. At almost 74 years old, I've seen a few things. What I hear happening here is this March for Life is a monologue, one discussion about the issue. You need dialogue. You need to get the people of the community with these young people at a table, and let's talk about it. Common sense. Before you put all this out in the park and the political, throttle behind it. Because, we know what's going to happen. It's going to be in the news. So you're the guidepost. You're the light here to make that happen. Get the dialogue going. Look at solutions. And don't look at just the problem, all right? The other thing about guns, we could put 100 guns out here. The police officer could leave the room, and if nobody touched those guns at all, ever, they would be here next year just like that, and the year after that. Focus on the people that are the problem. Don't argue with a piece of metal and plastic. It makes you kind of look a little bit foolish. I carried quite a few weapons systems in my day, and I will tell you that there is a solution here to get through the emotional piece, but it isn't division that will do it. Division will not do it. It will divide everybody here. So we can all get on the same page. It's a very difficult issue, and I do think they have a point of view. I think they have very, very eloquent points and common sense things that they have to say, but I also think that the people that represent this community also, along with them, have their points to say as well. So, if I have a dog on a leash, and then we have a leash law, and the dog attacks someone, who's going to be accountable? The dog? No, the dog, they might do something with the dog, but they're going to come after me. Focus on the people, not the guns. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Thank you, Council President. Thanks for the opportunity. I wish to implore that you not give a permit for this rally. I think that we have to keep in mind what day it is today. Today is D-Day. It's the anniversary of D-Day. And so these were our forebears, our grandfathers, etc., who fought for us to have First Amendment rights. And how did they do that? They had gun rights. And they had rights that are now in our Second Amendment, and they shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment says gun rights shall not may not, shall not be infringed. The second thing is, let's think about the location of where you would like to have the Centennial Park. I mean, why is it called Centennial Park? I mean, just think about our history. So those are two side things. But the second thing is, as I continue, we would like a world reimagined, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to take just legislative laws banning guns. When we talk about the gun problem, I agree with Ron when he said that it's a personal responsibility problem. It's not a gun problem, it's a heart problem. Without God, evil does reign. And whether guns are legal or not, those intent on harming us will do it. We talk about the mentally ill, and maybe well-meaning people want to ban the mentally ill from obtaining firearms, but currently, firearms cannot be legally possessed by someone determined by a judge to be of danger to himself or to others. But for others with mental issues, remember the ACLU in the 1970s successfully pushed to end involuntary commitment to a mental institution. Their stated goal in 1974 was to either abolish involuntary commitment to a mental institution or to set up so many procedural roadblocks and hurdles that it would be difficult, if not impossible, for the state to commit people to a mental institution without their will. So yes, it is a mentally ill problem, but we have to not ban involuntary commitment. The freedom to carry a gun is a privilege. Let's not take it for granted. It's blessed this nation, and I'm here to defend it tonight. Despite what you're being told, young people, by groups in the media, guns do save lives. Let's consider a few examples. But I'd like to repeat the old adage first. The only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. An example, just this last Wednesday in West Virginia at a graduation party. A woman with a gun. She's credited with saving lives after she shot an attacker who opened fire on a crowd of guests gathered for the graduation. And the chief of detectives in Charleston, West Virginia, said instead of running from the threat, she engaged with a threat, saved several lives. The 37-year-old assailant, Dennis Butler, drove around the apartment complex earlier in the day, and he was told by residents to slow down because there were children playing, and there was a group. So when this brave unnamed woman pulled a rifle and began shooting it into the crowd, when he pulled a rifle and began shooting into the crowd of dozens of people, she drew her pistol and fatally shot the man. And just an example of life saved with a gun. Due to time, I could go on with other examples. It's estimated that 1,030,000 individuals use guns every year in self-defense, and that doesn't even include the police force and the military. So of those 1,030,000 individuals using guns, 162,000 said they almost certainly would have been killed without their firearm to protect them. To put it in perspective, those 162,000 gun-protected lives, saved lives, versus the average homicide gun-related deaths per year at 11,208. You can see that guns are used to protect life more than to take life. The right to self-defense in this nation should never be put in question. Guns save more lives than they take by a staggering amount. And I would try to ask you young people to sift out, are you being used under the guise of the First Amendment, free speech, to possibly cover up the idea of gun control? Because that's a little bit what I'm hearing right now. A few more facts. As of 2019, there are over 20 million concealed carry permits holders in the United States. The vast majority are law-abiding citizens. And as Ron said, why punish the law-abiding citizens of this country for the sins of a few criminals? gun control only hurts the law abiders. And it makes us more vulnerable to evil. It does not protect you young people at the rallies. USA Today in 2019 said nearly 90% of police agreed that mass shootings would be reduced or avoided altogether by the presence of legally armed citizens. So let's keep the focus on the shooter, not the weapon he chose to attack someone. Again, I urge you to not grant the request for the rally. Things in Oxford were still in shock, and it was a terrible tragedy. Why rub salt into a wound? And especially from a nationwide outside group. Lawsuits still abound, and people are still really hurting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to speak or have a comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Thomas Bartz. All three of my children attended Oxford High School. I just found out about this, so I'm kind of throwing thoughts together here. I had two of my kids have their name on the Oxford Cup. My youngest graduated in 2017. He wrestled with Tate's older brother. They were real good friends. I have served in the military. I fought for your First Amendment rights, and I don't mean to address you guys directly, but I'd love to talk to you if you're willing to. I think the vehicle that you've chosen with this particular group, if you look on their website, they want to eliminate SROs, the school resource officers. They want to eliminate the police as part of their agenda on their website. With this March for Our Lives. It's David Hogg, who is tuned up with Bloomberg to create this organization, and it's basically an anti-gun group. I have no problem with them wanting to speak out and solve issues, but I think the vehicle that they've chosen for this particular event, I would much rather see them do it on their own as opposed to with this organization. And I think it would come from the heart that way, as opposed to being told what to do, how to do it, where to do it. This is a whole learning experience that I think they, you know, on that day, everybody that was in that school became a combat veteran. All you kids did. It's just a simple fact. So learn from this and do this on your own. Don't let this national group come in here and tell the people of Oxford what we should or shouldn't be doing in this rural community. I think people will embrace you a lot with that, if it's coming from you guys as opposed to this national organization. Bloomberg surrounded himself by armed guards 24/7, and yet he wants to disarm the American populace. I think you guys are better than that. I'd like to see, if you would, step back and might take a little more time, a little more effort. I represent a different view, but I'd be happy to work with you too, if you want to do this another way, another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak under public comment?
What's the next one? I mean, they kind of shut me down.
Would you like to speak, ma'am?
I forgot where I was at, kind of, but that man right there just spoke. He basically kind of said what I was going to.
Good.
But you got to talk to the kids. I call them gangs. It's an organization. And yeah, I used to do, you know, the marches and sit-ins and everything else like that. So it's nothing. But there's other ways. I mean, to me, if they took it another way and wanted to actually say, let's do something good for the schools, okay? Let's get your congressman, instead of giving a bunch of money to Addison for their libraries, how about, let's not build this little walkway, for the high school. How about taking that money and putting it into the school where you just harden it up instead of being soft target. And the kids gotta start saying something also, because I was walking around getting people signing the card for my neighbor. And, excuse me, he was such a good kid. But anyway, 10 kids were telling me half of them didn't even go to school because they already knew it right. So, I mean, who's in fault here? Grown-ups. So, I'm sorry, but he was a good kid.
Thank you for your comments.
Well, he was my next door neighbor. But anyway, okay, I'm done.
When anyone wants to speak under public comment? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Rich Schneider. I'm a Brandon Township resident, actually, Oak Oxford mailing address. I've been a concealed weapons permit holder for 25 years now. Hasn't been an issue. I know that if someone's in need, myself, my family, kids in the school are just going about their lives. And some idiot has a bad day and wants to make them have a bad day. I don't have to wait for the police. I can help. But it seems like all the time there's a constant drumbeat against the Second Amendment and the rights of people to protect themselves. It's gotten pretty ridiculous. I got a master's degree in engineering. For me, it's just, why is this so hard to understand? Any mass shooting, what do? What's the first thing they do? Let's call someone with a gun. Maybe if someone who had training, who had their CPL, was there to help right away, you've got definitely less casualties at any of these events. Again, 25 years, I keep watching. No law stops these people. Oxford, he wasn't supposed to have a gun there. Did that stop him? Did it? No, it didn't. You're not supposed to kill someone. Did that stop him? No, it didn't. There comes a hard time where you gotta make a decision and say, look, some people just don't observe the law. And you have to be prepared to protect people you love. Not just yourself, but people you love. I don't understand why this is so hard to see. Our younger generation, they're looking back. I went to the event they had with all the priests in the middle of town where they blocked off a town. Someone fainted, was having a medical condition. These poor kids were so frightened and terrified over what happened previously, they started running. It was just a person who had a heart condition or something. That's no reason to start stampeding. And luckily, there was policemen there, brought everyone back under control before things got out of hand. Again, at least as far as the CPL. Someone goes into one of these events and they don't know who has a gun and who doesn't. They'll think twice. There's no two ways about it. I'll give you a real life experience. Ted Nugent being who he is, definitely Second Amendment. My wife went to one of the Charmaine Nugent Queen of the Forest things. Teaches the ladies self-defense and coming back and meeting any threat that happens. And she came back that night. I asked her, I go, how'd it go? She took a step back and said, try something. I'm like, no way, you've been to Nugent's place. There's nothing I'm gonna try with you. Point being, maybe it's a Boy Scout thing, but be prepared. I mean, these guys shouldn't have to do this. These kids should not have to live in fear. But at the same time, there's a responsibility for people that have the knowledge and the drive and the responsibility to get a concealed permit, to practice with that, to know the situations, and to protect themselves, their families, our community. It's not rocket science. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else for public comment? Yes.
Hi, my name is Peyton Fitzpatrick, and I just graduated from Oxford High School this last month. And I just wanted to keep it super short and say that I think we've gotten a little off topic from my understanding. My understanding, this is not necessarily a Second Amendment issue, it's a First Amendment, but for almost 300 people that have signed up for a march, and for the families who lost their siblings and their children to be able to speak up and share their opinions, I think we should be focusing on that more than on our own ideas about the issue. And I think that should be kind of the focus of the rest of this meeting. So, thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Ms. Petrowski? If you can try to keep it a little abbreviated.
I will.
Thank
I
you.
will. Yes. It is a First Amendment issue according to young people, and I would take that very well. However, why is it on the website? It is all about communist ideology and banning guns. So you might want to reread the group that is sponsoring you. And, well, I would love to hear from you about that,
Ms.
because
Petrowski, maybe you can speak to them after the meeting about
Okay.
specific issues, but if there's something you
Okay.
want to talk to council about, please.
I think what I would like to address to the council is that the statistics, rather than young emotions about this, statistics on mass shootings by month, according to the Washington Post, in the first 5 months of this year, we've had 176 mass shootings in the U.S., and there have been a horrible number of 202 dead, including the shooters. And this occurred at a school or university 3 times since January of this year. So to me, these stats show it's obvious that we have supposedly gun-free zones in schools, but it's not working. So I think we need to be encouraged to eliminate gun-free zones in schools. They're a magnet for evil, for unbalanced people. Nikki Gozer, whose husband was killed in a gun-free zone in 2009, she followed the law and left her firearm in the car. Her husband was killed. So I think that at schools, it would be wise if we had trained volunteers, trained ex-police officers, trained retired veterans be allowed to carry weapons inside schools and the gun-free zones and allow them to protect children. This shouldn't happen again. This was a nightmare, what our children went through. In regard to assault weapons, we all think that the AR-15 and AK-47s are just the most horrible weapons on earth. Actually, in 1907, there was a semi-automatic Winchester model. You could buy it from a Sears catalog, delivered by the U.S. Post Office. And it was exactly like what we have today. It's called an AR-15 or AK-47. But it was used by civilians for 40 years. And it was finally enlisted into World War II as a war weapon. But for 40 years, there were 400,000 of these semi-auto rifles in the United States, and they were used by 3 generations of adults who owned them and used them responsibly, and no one ever even noticed. So the only functional difference is that back in 1907, for that 40 years, the bullets were stronger actually, and the guns fired faster than today's AR-15 or AK-47. And the only third difference is today we have a black stock on ours. But otherwise it's the same gun used responsibly, and that's the key. So it's really the person behind the gun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We gotta stick to the time limits.
I'll be there.
Thanks.
It's a tough topic for everybody. There's a lot of emotion regarding this. I'm a parent of a student who lived through this. There's kids in this room who lived through this, so it's tough. Well, everybody is allowed to have their own opinion. I have to go with the young lady's comment. This meeting is not about our opinion about the content of what this event is about. It's about their right to have it. That's what we're here for. We need to focus on that. You can't be all about the Second Amendment, but not approve of the First Amendment. It doesn't work that way. It's not give and take. You gotta take all of it. You can't cherry pick. Again, this meeting is not to argue about gun reform. It's about allowing these kids their opportunity to have their march. If you don't want to attend their march, you don't have to. Anybody who doesn't agree doesn't have to attend. If you want to have your own march, you can file a permit and have your own march for your own side. I don't see what the issue is. Nobody's asking you to participate. Nobody's asking you to agree with it. But they do have a right to have it. The amendment says so. So we should not be trying to stop that from happening any more than you think we should be stopping your Second Amendment. These kids, they are the experts. Anybody who's been to a school board meeting and watched these kids talk, they know what they're talking about. They lived through it, they've been living through it, and they relive it every single time this happens again. When Uvalde happened, it took us back to day one. We felt that in our hearts, we felt that in our soul. It was gut-wrenching. And then it's happened in Buffalo, it's happened every day since. And we relive it, and they're tired of reliving it. Let them get their voice out there. Maybe we don't agree with it, but just maybe they're going to do something that is going to cause the change. Maybe, how many times have you learned something in life that maybe you second guessed and it turned out to be okay? Give them the opportunity. They have the right.
Thank you for your comment. Sir, just a brief comment if you have one. We really need to, and you'll see that when we get to the agenda item,
It's great as everybody else.
it's not about these issues per se.
So real quick, first of all, school should be just as safe as walking into a bank, right? Our kids are there. They're more valuable than any amount of money that might be in that bank, number one, okay? Number two, all this talk about what it isn't. This is First Amendment, but it's not going to talk about gun control. I think what Tom Bartz brought up was let these folks that are currently asking for this venue here in Oxford to come back on their own, not with this group that's at the root. The root, as the twig is bent, so grows the tree. All right? You got a problem with the root here that's behind this. It has nothing to do with them personally or their character. I'm talking about what is behind, who benefits from this to get the national attention that they're seeking in this beautiful community. This is just one. I mean, they're working probably a lot of different communities. And these school shootings that are happening, do you think this is an accident?
No.
Do we think that this is not orchestrated in some kind of way? Think about it. Connect the dots. Right? 61 shootings in 21 to how many? Over 200 this year. Because the people behind this that want to benefit from a lot of other things taking down America are orchestrating these things, okay? We'll learn that truth soon enough. The news just came up just recently about Ukraine, that they've probably been talking for 3 months now that they were wrong, that Russia actually is taking over, doing real well in Ukraine to stop the problem. They went in there to denazify it. To denazify it. Look at the language. Look at the current events that you're not seeing on the mainstream media. You're not getting the information on the mainstream media. They won't even talk about it. So back to this. I'm going to go back to what I talked about. Same people, get the community leaders at one table and talk about it. And then maybe have an event out there where you have both sides at the same event talking about it. You know, a dialogue, not a monologue. And I think that's in your purview. I think that's your responsibility to make that happen, not just to check off and have a rally or an event. Think about some other options here, but with the same people. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 6, which is new business. First up is a special events application for Centennial Park for June 11th, 2022. And I just want to start off by saying a couple things. So it is not the Village of Oxford's job to determine whether we agree with any kind of event or not. It is literally, in my opinion, to make sure certain events that are in the park don't overlap. The park is available. I think that these events can happen whether you ask us or not, frankly. But there's an application process for special events. There was one scheduled for June 11th already. I spoke to that group and they have decided to move that event, so the park is now open for June 11th. But Mr. Medor, can you talk a little bit about our event application and why it's even in place, maybe to help me understand that?
A couple things, and the big difference is there are two things. The event, if it's a private event, you reserve our park, you pay the application fee, you provide us insurance, you give a $100 deposit. It's a wedding. It's what was planned this Saturday, which was a private event for some, is it preschoolers, right? The Goddard School, not kindergarten.
Right.
They do their private event with their parents and their kids. There's no special event then because it's not open to the public. It doesn't come to council for approval. It is simply a park reservation. We've had people reserve it for 2 hours to do a proposal. You just reserve it, we block it off and that. When you invite the public into the event, it becomes a special event application per the policy of the village. Both of those, whether it's park reservation or special event, part of that application process is liability coverage insuring the Village of Oxford. If something happened without one, I'm unaware of it. The one that was there last week with the veterans, they had their insurance. All the schools, the Goddard School provided their insurance, and that's not part of the school district, that's just a private school. So that is a standard procedure. I can't speak to the rally from the Black Lives Matter years ago. I don't recall, I don't remember. I know something happened. If somebody wants to just come into town and walk up and down the street carrying, there's nothing with us. There's no muss, no fuss. Do what you want to do. But when you're looking to hold the event on village property, it's either one thing. It's either private or it's public. Private events, you just reserve it and we approve administratively as long as you get your ducks in a row. Public events invited in, like some other church groups come in, some have been approved, there's one in front of us tonight. If you're inviting the public in, then they go the same thing. You know, DPW reviews it, Oxford Fire reviews it, Oxford Police, or Village Police reviews it. Perhaps the DDA affects with them, doesn't conflict with their schedules. So that's the process and why it's there. When I first received a call from Dylan's mom, the impression I was getting was that this was could be huge, and they're going to march to the school. And I'm trying to envision closing down M24 and all these things with like less than about 2 weeks' notice. We normally require 60 days. That's stated right on our application. It gives a chance for all those other entities to be aware of it. They need porta-johns, they need electrical, or is the fire inspections going to be needed for tents and stuff. So that's the whole process of why we get that time frame. We have approved others under a shorter time frame. Veterans Memorial Parade was one of them. We found out about it like the night of our meeting, and they wanted to have their parade in a couple weeks. That's a standard event we've had for years. So doing it in a short time frame to police and fire departments march in it, so they're fairly aware of it. That was easy, it was approved, but we did get the insurance. So that's kind of how it was. I initially, though, speaking to your mother, thought Scripted Park, when I was here in March to the high school, was a much better, safer event. My concern is we're already disturbing all these businesses downtown with our construction project, and I'm very sensitive to them and their needs. They went through COVID, and then they went through the M24 project. So part of my thought process on that is let's try to minimize the impact of these businesses already being impacted. Scripted Park to me seemed more wide open, handle a larger crowd, parking right there, additional parking just up the road at the ball fields, much more parking available. And then you have a clear shot up Gillespie, sidewalk, safety pass to the high school. So to me, that was a better location for me for a lot of reasons. I was never dissuading the applicant from having the event for any reason. I was just trying to say, I think this is a better location. That was the first conversation over the phone. We literally got the application to my email Friday afternoon. I forwarded it to council Friday afternoon. So although we sometimes can get together and approve these, and sometimes we can do them relatively simple, sometimes they require some thought going into these. And so it's changed a little bit now. The request is now to just use the park, and then they can disperse and they can end up at the high school however they want. Some will bike, some will drive, some will walk, march, however. There was a request for us to, maybe they could use the Pollyant Trail Bridge. Pollyant Trail is not controlled by us. That's the Pollyant Trail Management Council. As they go north of the village on Gillespie or M24, they're out in the township. And I talked to your mother, I said, just check with the township. Jack Curtis out there. They have sheriff department out there. That's out of our jurisdiction. So when you have multiple jurisdictions, multiple entities, things going on, it's just difficult sometimes. Can be done, but when you're looking to do it within about 15 days, it makes it tough. So that's kind of the lowdown from my perspective.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. So from my perspective, I want to do everything that I can do to help make sure this event's a success. I think it's great for anyone to speak up about anything that they want to talk about. That's why I'm pretty liberal when it comes to public comment. You see, there's a lot of people would start beating the gavel on here, and my council members, not in this meeting, but in other meetings, have kind of looked at me and like, are you going to cut them off? And I'm like, when people, show up and are brave enough to speak in public, even if it's here at a council meeting, I just really like to respect anyone's words and give them a chance. And I apologize for cutting you off, man. And so I think the same respect is owed to any event that is going to be planned in our park. And so I have seen the students suffer a lot of roadblocks along the way to have their voices heard, and I don't want council to be one of those. So that's where I'm at. I'll let my fellow council members speak as well, and then we can take action on this and kind of see what's going on with this application.
I can tell you my concern is anybody can protest. Anybody can come out and demonstrate at any point in time, and they have absolutely no requirement to tell us. And I would prefer that we know and we can plan around it, and that we be a community that people feel like they can tell us and we can prepare. We can let our businesses know. We can make suggestions to find additional parking so it doesn't affect our businesses as much as possible. I would prefer that any group come and let us know. And that way I want us to be open to things like this. And, it's not our job to decide how we feel about the issue, whether it's political or what the church is here saying. Whether I agree or don't agree is not for me to decide. But knowing that we have proper police coverage, and that it's not a village-sponsored event. If it was, then yeah, we don't want to get in political lines. We don't want to be doing this. It's not village sponsored. It's just somebody asking for the space. And I'd rather we know every time if we can, so we can prepare.
I do. Well, first I told my family this is going to be a quick meeting. But I appreciate everyone's comments. I really, truly do. I am even surprised that people are here tonight just because it was going to be such a quick meeting for two, event proposals. So thank you all. I always appreciate when people are moved to come here. Kind of just echoing, it's not about emotions or how I feel about it. It's an approval process, just like any church or any other organization that would apply, and we would go through that process. And if this is approved, then this group deserves to gather peacefully and safely, whether we like it or not. I mean, that is what it is.
Okay. Mr. Madore?
Chief may have some input on there, but Bob Davis is on the phone, been listening, village council attorney. I don't know. Bob, do you have anything you'd like to mention?
No, Joe, it's just, it's, you know, we have a process, and I would like to see us adhere to our process. And we have to be sort of content neutral with respect to our legal process, and not skirt the process because we agree or disagree with the content of an event. So to the extent we can, and to the extent that we can accommodate, I'm always trying to help in that regard. But we do have an application process that I think we need to follow it. Plus the next group who wants to do this, if we don't follow it, or we follow it in a different way, you're gonna have some ramifications legally in that regard. So, this is a special event. It's an invitation to the public. I think we have to follow our process, although we can do our best to expedite the process.
So I understand there may be concerns with satisfying our process in regard to insurance. Is that the case? Can anybody speak to me on that? Do you know?
Yeah.
That's going to be an issue? Okay.
Initially, your mother told me you thought that there might be some coverage from the national group, whatever, and that's the reason I had any belief that it was a kind of national group. Because I know if you apply as a nonprofit, she said, well, we're a nonprofit. If you've applied or done that, then you're still just you. You're not a true nonprofit if you've not been through the process, I guess, and approved. What it boils down to, I think, too, and I did talk to our insurance agent today, there's always liability in the village, even if any group has an event on our property and they do have the insurance in place. Yes, their insurance is there in the front, in the forefront, but there's always liability for us to some degree in the background. Let's say with a poor sidewalk or something. And he said if this group isn't truly a completed entity and it's just a group of people, then that's really what you are, and you really wouldn't be able to get insurance. And he kind of agreed to that. So at that point, all the liability would be on the village. Again, we're always in the background anyways. That's just something that you guys need to be aware of.
Okay. Do you want to step up to the podium?
Yep. My pencil, sorry. I would like to say that I talked to the ACLU, and they told me that grassroots organizations without significant financial resources, including liability insurance, should not be prevented from engaging in a march simply because it cannot afford the charges the city would like to impose. I would also like to say that we have been putting, with our marketing, we've been putting out March at Your Own Risk to make it known that this is not the village's responsibility if you do get injured at the event, which is very unlikely. We're making sure everybody is safe at the event, and so on forth. Thank you.
Other question?
No.
Okay. You want to speak?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the special events application for Centennial Park, the rally Saturday, June 11th, in association with Dylan's Group.
Support. Is that as is with the application?
As is, with the understanding that they're not a formal nonprofit, so they cannot get
Obtain insurance?
obtain insurance, so.
Okay. Can we amend it to say that the
I amend it.
application has received?
Application is received. Thank you.
And support.
You're making a motion to waive the insurance requirement.
Well, they're not a group, right? So, I mean, like, they're not.
We've had individuals
That's
do a
what
wedding
it's
that provide us insurance coverage. It could be homeowners, whatever, but
Okay.
but yes.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
So yes, Bob.
I'd like to hear. I mean, I'll just say it's a protest that's gonna happen whether we approve it or not. I mean, so
She didn't hear you.
that's my thoughts on it.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
I said it's a
I'm sorry, we can't-
protest.
it's council's time to discuss. We have a motion on the table. Bob, did,
March for Life is a group, and that's working with the kids.
Bob, do you have comments?
Bob, do you have a comment?
Is the group helping them out?
We are a separate entity.
I can. Is it coming through the speaker at all? Can you guys hear it out back there at all?
I can hear it, but I don't know what it is.
We just want the motion to be clear that the village council is waiving the insurance requirement under the special event permit process.
Okay, that's clear. Yes.
So let me just speak one more comment myself. The applicant is, name of the event is March for Oxford, and the applicant, Oxford High School, yes, it's the name of the event, Oxford. The applicant's name is Janine Morris.
Yeah, the people applying for this is not March for Our Lives. The people applying for this is a student-led group, which is a newly formed nonprofit in the process called No Future Without Today.
On page 2, it says applicant Janine Morris, applicant, additional sponsors or participants of March for Our Lives, No Future Without Today. So they are listed as additional sponsors or participants.
Can we be assured that March for
Can I
Life
have a simple question?
to participate?
We'll have to wait till public comment because there's a motion on the table that council is to vote on.
Taxpayers' dollars that you're talking about here, I think it should be heard.
Sir, I'm sorry, you have to wait till public comments, Open Meetings Act rules.
Are
Any
you
oth-
prepared for counter protest, and are you willing to?
Sir, this is, sir, I have to abide by the Open Meetings
The
Act.
police department for the additional security?
Any further discussion by council?
It is the nonprofit group ruling this, it is their job to make sure that everything is taken care of. We are not, this is not a Oxford Village sponsored event at all. We are approving a location because I would prefer that if you come out and protest, that you tell me when you're coming too, so that we can know ahead of time. I think that, again, this is about us being open and being able to properly prepare for anybody who comes into town. That's my concern, that we are open and available for people rather than having pop up without us knowing. Everybody has the right to do that, but if we come across as the group who doesn't want to hear about it or is going to turn it away, we're less likely to be able to prepare our businesses and our community members. That's my concern. That'll be my concern every time.
So I organize a group right now to come up.
Sir,
Go against
I'm
it?
sorry, you cannot speak right now. I apologize. You can speak again at public comment, next on the agenda after we get through A and
Is that going to
B.
be before a vote?
It'll be after the vote. The vote's going to be right now.
What's that
What
good
good
for?
is that?
We heard from everybody during public comment, and now it's time. We heard from everyone during public comment, now it's time for council to vote. Could you call the roll, please?
March for Life is a
Bourgeois?
co-applicant.
Yes?
Cook?
Yes,
Ross?
Yes.
motion carries.
And Helmut are absent.
Thank you, motion carries.
They do not have Oxford's best interests.
Sir.
in mind, period.
Next up on the agenda is the special events application for Centennial Park for Oakwood Community Church. This is August 21, scheduled from 6 to 7:30 p.m.
I will make a motion to approve the special events application for Centennial Park, Oakwood Community Church, Sunday, August 21st, 2022, as received.
Support?
Okay, let me just see.
And we do have their approved insurance on file.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, the motion was made by Ross, seconded by Bourgeois. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Ross?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Bourgeois?
Yes?
Helmut and Kemp are absent.
Motion carries. Okay, next up is public comment. I'm going to ask that everybody be very respectful to everybody in this room and to the council members. This is basically volunteering of our time.
Is that you? I'm making a joke.
I'm sorry, I did not hear what you said, but maybe it's for the better.
Please
Please don't.
I'm going to set a timer. It will ring And when you hear it ring, I will have to interrupt you. We're going to do 3 minutes per person, and I'll make it fair, so I'm going to enforce that 3 minutes across the board. So would anyone like to speak under public comment? Ms. Petrowski?
Thank you. Evelyn Petrowski. This is to advise you that on June 11th, there will be a counter rally at the location. And secondly, when was the nonprofit formed, the new nonprofit formed? I would like to hear about that. What date?
We can't answer any questions during public comment.
Maybe you could entertain the young people to let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak under public comment? Yes, sir.
Dan, well, you've made your decision, and we're all adults, we can accept your decision, we have to. But you've set a precedent by bypassing your own process, recommended by your attorney. Doesn't seem to be very wise when you set precedents like that, because what you do is you open the door to more mischief, more chaos. You know, another group comes in, they don't have insurance, well, they don't have the right representation, but you know, they're just a private group, so we're gonna let them in. Be careful. You're opening yourselves, at least you're opening the city of Oxford up to, maybe not yourselves, but the city of Oxford up to problems. Because I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't believe there's going to be any kind of real issues or problems there. Certainly would hope there wouldn't be, but if you knew there would be an injury or a problem of any type, if you knew in advance something like that was going to happen, would you make this decision tonight? Without insurance? Put it all in the city of Oxford? I don't think so. Common sense, I don't think you would.
Thanks for your comment. I will just say I am a very risk adverse type person. I think this event is highly distinguishable from other events and so I'm very comfortable with the decision we
You
made.
being risk averse about yourself, that's fine, but you're representing the city of Oxford.
In this role right now, I'm risk adverse.
The city of
I
Oxford,
agree.
not just you.
Yep, the village. Would anyone else like to speak under public comment? Mr. Petrowski?
Yeah, with all due respect to everybody concerned in this discussion this evening and your decision, you are the council, you have the privilege to make the decision. I think it's ill-advised to allow a nationally represented organization like the people that are co-applying with the local student population, who I fully respect. My heart goes out to you and all of your classmates. I know people in my own neighborhood that are friends and very close. We all of us, our hearts break for what happened. But allowing a national organization whose informed intent on their own website is to co-opt this issue for gun control, which I don't think is what the students are about. You're looking for solutions to the problems. And I just think it's ill-advised. That organization is huge. There are 330 rallies planned in this country by this organization for gun control reform. That's their purpose. Unfortunately, you very well may have been taken advantage of and co-opted by this organization who will send people from outside our community to potentially cause problem. And I recognize maybe they won't. But I think it's ill-advised to allow this to happen, break our own rules in order to allow a national organization whose intent is ill-advised to begin with from a national standpoint to come here and do what they intend to do. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're respectful of our community. I hope it goes very well. And I support the effort that the students are proposing, but I would love to see them do it locally with local conversation, not pulling in organizations like, can't remember the name at the moment, but I was at your website, that's why I'm concerned. Thank you for the opportunity to express the opinion, and I will pray that the 11th is a very nice evening.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm gonna go back to my original question. Now, these kids, they got their own little deal, right? Is that how it goes? All right, okay. Then here's the original. How was this on the calendar year already without your approval or without anybody kind of knowing about it? How was it already on there? You know, that's what I mean, who approved it? Which organization approved this? I'm still wanting to know, type of deal.
It's on the March for Life website that it's going to be at Oxford Centennial.
It was on there before this meeting was even scheduled.
Yeah, a few days ago.
I'm not, I don't necessarily want to, I know it's not an answer time, but I do want to just kind of state again that demonstrations can happen without us knowing about it at all, and whether it's planned before we approve it or not, or whether we do approve it or not, doesn't mean that it will or won't happen. A demonstration, anybody can show up at any point in time. I prefer that we know about it so that we can have our police, our fire, our county police, have everybody know about it. Again, if you planned one, I would prefer it if you call me and let me know so that we can, even if you don't come to Village, and I prefer this. Bring it to us and let us know about it. We're not gonna look at what your issue, what you're standing for. We're gonna find out that you wanna stand in the park you wanna be at isn't already taken, and then work around it. So I apologize for speaking at this point in time.
Fine.
But
It's an important point to
know about
make.
your insurance
Yeah.
in advance, so you can plan ahead, right?
Anyone else like to speak under public comment? Yes.
I just want to take the time to thank the students for putting themselves out there. It's not an easy thing for them to do, especially after everything they've been through. It takes courage to get out there and do that. You guys followed the proper procedures. You filled out the application, you contacted the village. You tried to give as much advance notice as you could, and you're trying to do it the right way. And so I just want to acknowledge that and not have that be taken away from you. It takes a lot of courage to get out there. Not everybody's going to agree with everything you're doing, but there are a lot of people who do agree, and I'm one of them, so.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak under public comment? Yes, sir.
I want to extend my hand to you guys once again, if you're willing. Okay, it's entirely up to you. I give you a lot of credit for being here. There's roughly, 1,500 students at the high school? Okay? And there's 3 of you here. Okay? So my hat's off to you. I may not agree with you, but I respect what you're doing, or trying to do anyway. My thing is, once again, and I'll say this to you guys, I hope that you do it yourselves, okay? And don't allow somebody else to tell you what to say, or how to say it, or what to do. Whether that be the ACLU or this March for Our Lives group, okay? They're very controversial. I don't think that you guys agree with a lot of the stuff that's on their website, so the only thing I ask you is go to their stuff and research who you're getting in bed with, because they want to get rid of school resource officers. They want to get rid of the police. A lot of this stuff is right there in the open in their agenda on the left of their website. You go through there and look at it. As far as the township goes, I think you guys did what you wanted to do with your vote. It sure has the appearance of having been predetermined that it was on a national website, and we're splitting hairs. Well, it's really not a organization, or it is an organization. And I think the other disservice was to our police department here, who's going to have to carry the burden if in fact there is a counter protest, and at the cost to the citizens and to everybody here as well, that I didn't hear expressed prior to the vote. And I think that was a major factor that should have been at least addressed as to how that would, affect our own police department and overtime and extra officers and support from maybe the sheriff's department on this thing. It takes a lot of time and effort to put that together from my military background, I know it's a lot of logistics and last minute stuff always gets to be a mess. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. We'll move on to council comments. Councilperson Bourgeois, you want to start?
Yeah, I think that the two groups here are a lot closer than it sounds like. I believe that from what I've heard from, I have spoken to some of the kids, I've spoken with Dylan about what the plan is. I think from what I'm hearing, it is more of a very personal to this township. And I don't believe, I mean, it's their event. This is no future without tomorrow's
Sorry,
event.
that's not for you.
Oh, I'll stop. This is no future without tomorrow's event. I know that there's going to be family members who've lost their kids on November 30th up there speaking. And what they're speaking for is not so much what this fear of this other group is coming into this community. It is Oxford. It's our kids who are leading this event. And I think that, thank you, maybe if this had been something, if Texas hadn't happened, maybe there would have been something scheduled out a little further in advance. Maybe it would have been a little different. But at this point in time, these kids are latching on to be heard, to speak up, and to grieve. And that's what they're asking for, is the space to do it. So I think as a council, we have a duty to approve events, not based on what they're asking or what they're saying, but just to have the space. And like I said before, I've said it every time, I prefer to have advance notice of it. When the special circumstance comes across, when somebody's saying I'm protesting and I'm doing it with or without your approval, I'd rather have the heads up at least and be able to plan around it. So I want to thank the kids and thank the whole community that came out today, because those are very important messages. And I appreciate what you said, sir. I forgot your name, I apologize, but I do believe, yes, sir. Thomas. I think you'll find that we have some kids that are really willing to listen, and they want to be heard, and from what I know of our community, we are full of people who will both listen and hear. And I just appreciate everybody for being open and available for doing that. So, thank you. Sorry.
Very well said. Thank you. Councilperson Ross?
I wish everyone was still in the room. I'm going to say this as a gun owner, and I'm always have been open and honest about that. So, first off, everyone keeps calling you kids. You have lived through something none of us could imagine. And so you are adults. You have made this decision. I commend you for what you are doing and sitting in a room full of people that do not have necessarily the same opinions as you and staying here and standing your ground. I'm very proud of you. I also am appreciative of everyone else in this room for coming up and sharing. I do think that there is room for middle ground, and if there was ever anything to be done, it's to have those conversations and figure out how we can all come together, because nobody in this room wanted that to happen and nobody wants it to happen again. But obviously, we have to do something. And so that middle ground is going to be critical. I really encourage anyone who is going to be there, either for the students event or for this counter protest, to please keep in mind that this entire community has gone through something traumatizing. And while it is not in anyone's control, but because this has been so heated around a Second Amendment gun weapon issue, that when we have folks and families there who have gone through real gun violence, please be mindful about this counter protest if it should happen. The last thing we want in this community is more trauma. And again, I say all of that as a gun owner and a supporter of both the First and Second Amendment. So I just thank you all for being here today. Again, I said it was going to be a short meeting and I was wrong, but I appreciate that, to have the discourse and that people are passionate and, you know, love Oxford as much as we all do. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say that I think that real change happens when you have people on both sides of an issue come together to find that common ground. That's the only way it's going to happen. When you have two sides battling it out, you're never going to get anywhere. So I think the people that are remaining in this room right now can honestly do that. And so I'm hopeful. I also echo the comments of my fellow councilwomen that, you know, I just really pray that the event goes well, and that even if there's a kind of proposal, that maybe it's an opportunity for that dialogue, you know, the dialogue that needs to be had. That everybody really does want the same thing. And so hopefully we can get there. I want to thank our Oxford Police Department, especially Chief Solwald's here tonight, you know, always protecting us. I moved to Oxford a long time ago because it was such a safe place to live. I live right down the street from the police department, and I really appreciate their presence all the time. And, you know, I know that they hadn't planned for providing, you know, everything they do for an event on June 11th, like they're now going to be doing, but they're going to do it just because that's what they do, and they wouldn't have it any other way. Even if they weren't asked to do it, they would be there. And so I really want to thank you and your team, Chief, for that, because I mean, your presence in this community makes us feel safe. You know, when you're out there, and I saw, you know, officers down at Frosty Boy, like, you know, just hanging out with kids. And I mean, that is really part of the work that you do to keep the community safe, making sure everybody knows that you're there and they can trust you. And we all trust you and respect you a lot. So thank you. Thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks for having patience with me this evening too, to try to run this meeting. And thanks for having patience with each other. Our manager, clerk, police chief, if there's anything you'd like to say, please feel free. Otherwise, we can.
I'm good.
Good. Okay, chief.
Only that I didn't speak because I didn't want us to be a factor in the decision as far as policing it, because that's what we do, that's our job. So we're going to be there regardless of whatever side wants to say what. So that, I mean, we don't have the luxury of picking sides. We have to remain neutral. So we are here for everybody, all right, regardless of what it is. So we will be there.
Thank you. Any further comments from council? No. Okay, I'll move to adjourn at 7:29.
Second.
All those in favor?
We gotta finish this up. Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.